Hello and welcome to the Leave, Laugh, Love podcast. We're your hosts, Evelyn and Veronica. This is a podcast where we talk about life after high demand religion. When we were deconstructing, there weren't a lot of resources about the crazy kind of Catholicism we found ourselves in, so we decided to be a resource for others in that place. We may have left the church, but we're still laughing and loving. No matter where you're at with your faith, we're so happy you're here today. Hello and welcome. Today, ironically, we are going to be talking about the things that we still hold from Catholicism. And I think this is kind of, I don't know, the best way to describe it. Like, I think we spend a lot of time on the podcast, obviously, talking about the harm that's perpetuated within certain types of Catholic environments. And because exactly as our little intro says, like, there just weren't a lot of resources talking about that. But there are obviously still a lot of ways that, like, our faith and our upbringing within the faith formed us positively that we do still hold. And so I wanted to just give a little time today to honor that and to have a little chit chat about it. So yeah, here we are.
Incredible.
Before we get started on that, welcome to Small Group. Veronica, what's your rose and thorn?
Thanks. My rose is probably the fact that this is not a research-heavy episode, and I can say cross-stitch.
I love the cross-stitch chit-chat.
I've been so obsessed with cross-stitching so much, I can't stop. And my thorn is probably that I think I've been spending too much money on cross-stitch stuff.
That's real. That's valid. I would say my rose is, I'm also happy to be sitting here cross-stitching. I was just telling Veronica as we were starting this, I'm getting kind of close to being done with the flowers, or at least like the more complex flowers. And as soon as I'm done with florals, then I can start on the words on my cross stitch, which I've told you guys across like 7 different episodes now, says I can do all things through spite, which strengthens me. I'm kind of ready to be done with this one and move on to another fun one. So yeah. Okay. Rose and thorn all wrapped up in one there. There we go.
Incredible.
All right.
Well, Evelyn, let's get chatting about the things that we still hold and value from our years of being Catholic.
Yeah. I guess I think like the first kind of piece that sticks out to me is that I think I always had a heart for, well, I guess to give a little bit of background on what I'm about to say, like I was always raised Catholic, just not always super intense or necessarily like what would be considered very devout. But I went to Catholic school like as a small child, like from first grade through 5th grade. So I learned, I feel like, a lot in that setting, particularly about things around like Catholic social teaching and the Beatitudes and, you know, things that are just like digestible for an elementary school student, around how we should like care about the poor. And like growing up, like my grandma volunteered with St. Vincent de Paul and we would go do like cooking for the soup kitchens. And like it was something that I actually like irritated my parents a lot because I like every time we would like pass a homeless person, I would want to go into the gas station and get a sandwich for them and stuff. Like that stuff like always resonated with me. And it's something that like still I feel like I hold very strongly. I think like there was kind of no dissonance there until I think the first major one for me that kind of felt like a disconnect was when things were really starting to heighten, tensions were really starting to heighten around like the southern border, particularly like living in Texas at the time, and talking about building a wall and all of these things. And I was just like, hey, like I feel as though tear gassing children is not feeling very Catholic social teaching to me.
Surprisingly, I don't think that's aligned.
I feel like that was the first time that I felt like I did kind of feel like there was this disconnect of like the politics being held above the actual like faith within faith settings where that felt a little weird and strange to me. But yeah, I still like I fully believe in the dignity of the human person, in case that's not clear, and all of those lovely pieces of it.
Yeah, I definitely think the dignity of the human person is something that we learned and I hold on to
very strongly.
And that also informed like a lot of what into my decision to leave the church.
Seriously.
But I think one of the hard parts is I talk to people and they're like, so where does that value come from? Where does that dignity come from? Like if it doesn't come from this intrinsic value of being created by God in his image and likeness and destined for heaven with him, I don't know necessarily.
I just think that humans have inherent intrinsic value. Yeah.
Right.
Sorry.
I think life has intrinsic value and we have a responsibility to
protect it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think like that was kind of a big piece actually for both of us, is that like church teaching ultimately did play like the values that we held that are aligned with the faith did actually play kind of a large role in the leaving of the faith for both of us. There's that one song that I've heard as like an audio on TikTok like so many times now. I don't remember the title, but it's like I loved the teachings of Jesus so much that I followed him right out the door. Preachers kept preaching with hate on their tongue and distaste for the meek, mild, and poor. I was like, bars. But okay. I feel like I've kind of.
I think the thing is like, I think the difference is I learned how some of my practical applications of that wasn't actually including the dignity of all people.
Yeah.
I think that the dignity of people includes queer people and, gay and trans
100%.
people and immigrants and people in every country.
100%.
A lot of the demonized, scapegoated people of today. It's like, so we don't have like prostitutes and tax collectors like Jesus.
Right.
Jesus ate with the prostitutes and tax collectors. And I mean, I think that he also ate with the trans people and the people who look different than him.
Yeah, I mean, it's
from
like it's
a poor country.
It feels as though like those messages have almost been lost around like the thing of like the Good Samaritan and like who is your neighbor. It's these people who are the outsiders and the people who do care for the marginalized. And I do think like we live in a time where the groups that are marginalized are kind of different than biblical times.
I have a lot of respect for the Catholics who do
have congruency with that. Yeah. And I think that's the other thing is that it's not everyone. I think that's why it just becomes like kind of hard when it feels like Catholicism. It almost felt like in a lot of ways, and I did not feel like this for my whole life, but I just felt this increasingly so over time. It felt like being politically conservative was becoming a more correct way to be Catholic in a lot of people's eyes than like the Bible.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, I think I really do hold that. A piece that I think that's been super interesting for me to reflect on, because most of this like reflection has occurred continually over time throughout my relationship with Katie, is the way that everything they say, like all of the theology around like marriage and all of the theology around relationships and like the giving this gift of yourself and the like sacrificial love and lots of these different pieces. I'm like, oh, that makes sense now. I get that. I like that.
When it comes to a relationship.
Yeah. It a lot of it actually does resonate with me now in the sense of like it does, being in a relationship, a romantic committed relationship. It's obviously just a different kind of relationship than other relationships. And it does bring you out of yourself and out of your own concerns in a lot of ways, the whole thing of like, you do kind of just become like one unit in a lot of ways. And like the decisions you're making about your life together is like becomes very interconnected. And you have to sometimes like you have days where neither of you are feeling great and 100%. And you have to be able to, be self-sacrificial a little bit and not always just be like, well, this is actually what I need right now, no matter how you're feeling, like there's that balance. And that I definitely feel like I've lived through that. And interestingly enough, a lot of the things I felt like I learned about complementarity, I've realized that it just doesn't even really play out in a gender way. I'm not saying like, I'm dating a girl who fills the role of a man in the complementarity thing. It's not in a gendered way, just in that like people are different and bring different skill sets and bring different values, and like there is really something to that of a dynamic of a relationship that you learn how you in your differences can benefit like, the relationship as a whole, like all of that kind of stuff. It's just like been so fascinating to me that I'm like, not everything, but a lot of things I learned in Christian marriage classes and stuff.
Like theology of the body, complementarity of the sexes, and like that does make a lot of sense, which I think is also why like reading Theology of the Body rings true for people. It's because like, of course, I don't want to mow the lawn and I'm glad my husband mows the lawn. And like if we both only wanted to mow the lawn and nobody wanted to do dishes, like it sucks because we're both angry doing dishes. That's like a microcosm, but like that makes sense. And like even our friendship and podcasting relationship works so well because we have different to the table. When corporate, they tell you to build a diverse team team that has different skills and strengths. So you're right, that like does make a lot of sense. And I think like the lessons that I learned from like religion about being your unique self, the way that God made you, and that you have something unique to offer the world that only you can bring, and that extends to any room you're in. We said something in household that every time a new sister is inducted, we get one step closer to what God wants us to be as a household. And that was something that was very touching and inspiring in college, part of this group of women, and like this sincere like belief in that all of us together brought something valuable and household wouldn't be the same without us. That like helps me now to remember that like, yeah, whatever room I'm in, I might not believe that God placed me in this room for a specific reason, but that I have like value to add through who I am or what I have to say or what I do for others.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's like that idea. Oh, this is one piece of it actually that I think is been really big for me, is this idea of like self-sacrifice for like the betterment of your community. Like I think that, I don't know, I think that when I was leaving the church, the self-sacrifice point was one of those things that was so touchy for me, because I felt like I had been pushed to the point with church teaching that I had just like quite literally emptied myself out and had nothing left. And I was like, oh my God, this is the worst. This is so dumb. But I think definitely like since moving to LA and kind of having to like establish a new life and new relationships and new friendships, like I've been working very intentionally to create community within my life, and like the kind of community that I think in a lot of ways was inspired by like the way we lived in Steubenville. Like I really liked the ability, like having the friendships and the relationships where you have people who quite literally live in your neighborhood. Like you can pop a minute down the street and just text your friend and show up, and you guys are gonna like cook dinner together or like just go about life in community. And I've really tried to bring that into my life now. And we have like a couple friend who lives in Burbank, and we're able to like kind of do that a lot. And it's been so lovely to have someone who's nearby where like it's just like either of us can text each other and just like show up, and we're like, okay, we're all doing dinner together tonight. Or like we've done a lot of events where we've like cooked a big amount of something together and like frozen it and had it as batched. It's just like, yeah, like it's the mundane things really become so much more lovely in community. And I think that's like a value I really took away from our experiences in the church.
Yeah. I mean, I know that's a big reason why I liked college was
for sure.
Community.
Yeah.
He talks about that with community, and people reminisce about college because it was the only time you lived in a walkable community.
Oh, quite literally.
Kind of thing. Definitely is a factor. Okay, so one of like the biggest things for me is definitely Catholic social teaching, which I remember learning about in middle school and high school youth group a little bit. And there was some stuff about it in my Bible, my Catholic youth Bible, the orange cover. Had it though.
I had the orange one.
But it was like I feel like there's not a big emphasis on it, at least in the circles I was in. And like at school, it was not as big of an emphasis, but the main like teachings of Catholic social teaching I love. And when I hear stories about saints who like really valued and practiced Catholic social teaching, I love that. Like people like Dorothy Day and stuff like that. So the 4 or 5 like main tenets of Catholic social teaching is the preferential option for the poor, the dignity of work and the rights of workers, solidarity, and care for God's creation. And like, I think a lot of these end up being like, okay, Catholic social teaching is not about abortion. It's not about gay sex. It's not about straight sex outside of marriage. You know, these big things that are plaguing our society and our social structure today and threatening the family, according to so many of like the main talking points that you get out of Catholicism sometimes. But it's the preferential option for the poor. So, which means like if you have an option between one thing or another thing, your preferential option would be to serve the poor.
Right.
So if you have some extra money and your options are to donate it to a homeless shelter or donate it to an arts center or something like a museum, you would donate it to the poor. if you have preferential option to like sell excess clothing, your preferential option would be to donate it to the poor rather than selling it for money for yourself.
Right.
Unless like obviously like you yourself need money.
Yes.
If you are poor and need to be able to pay your bills or buy groceries for your kids. But I feel like that gets like very undervalued, preferential option for the poor.
Yes.
And the dignity of work and the rights of workers.
Such a big piece.
The summer we started deconstructing, what class was this? The Church in the Modern World.
Summer I turned Catholic.
Yeah, the summer I turned gay.
Sorry.
I just like binge read the entire
Summer
book
I Turned Pretty.
The Summer I Turned Pretty, and then like watched the whole 3 seasons.
I've been loving how much a moment that's been having in pop culture lately.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And I'd been avoiding it because I hadn't like engaged with it yet. So
Yes,
then finally
yes.
I did. So I've been catching up and yeah. Anyway. Okay. So, but yeah, that summer I was taking this Church in the Modern World class, which basically the gist of it was like show Catholic teaching from a little bit before the modern age, and then sort of how like pre-Vatican II through Vatican II and beyond, the church maybe has developed teachings and presented it in different ways, or the way that the church is now presenting her teachings. And there were just a bunch of different social issues on there, but one of them was about work and fair wages and the dignity and rights of the worker. There's of course Rerum Novarum by Leo the 13th, which is having a little bit of a moment now with Pope Leo the 14th. Everybody was like, hey, maybe he's inspired in some way by Leo the 13th and Rerum Novarum, and he was very Catholic social teaching, rights of the worker vibes. And so there has been a lot of discourse this year on that. But
yes,
one of the things that like drives me batty sometimes about Catholic organizations is that there's all these Catholic documents that
talk about paying a living wage.
Specifically talk about paying a living wage, especially for families and kids, like so that parents can support their families, and paying a living wage so that you yourself can live. And so many of these Catholic organizations simply don't pay living wages to their employees, and or you have to like fundraise your own salary, and which just means you're like outsourcing the salary to that person's connections. But the church, like on paper, like does have these values towards the rights of workers, which I think is important and is one of the things that like makes me really angry nowadays with the state of the country and how many of my friends and others struggle paycheck to paycheck to make ends meet.
Yeah. I think like that's been a huge piece of it for me too. And also just like, I don't know, I feel like there's this concept that people who are not Catholic or people who do not hold these values are living these like hedonistic lives that just are completely self-absorbed and not concerned with others. And it's just been like, for me, no. I mean, like, yeah, like I obviously, like I don't know. I still also just don't deal with the like existential guilt around like every single decision I ever make. But I go out of my way to do things for people that are not always convenient or beneficial. Like, it's just, I still hold that.
I think like one of the funny things about all of this is how I was really fed up with some of the conservative values in the church when I felt like I was becoming less conservative and more socially liberal, that I felt like I couldn't be Catholic anymore. And now that I'm trying to revisit some of this stuff, I'm like, oh, these are my values. I just started valuing these things more than these things.
Yeah.
Preferential option for the poor, and how much like hypocrisy there is in the church about that. Dignity of work and rights of workers.
Yep.
I'm like, screw capitalism. This is crazy and bleeding everyone dry, and we need to pay people a livable wage. Okay, the church also says that. Solidarity, which is the whole idea of like standing with your fellow man. So if they're being oppressed, you stand with them. If they are fighting for a cause, you stand with them. It comes directly from Romans 12, rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep, like,
which I love.
We stand with people, and I think like that that solidarity was one of the things that like was slowly leading me out of the church.
Yeah.
Especially at the beginning when I was seeing sexuality as an issue outside of myself. That wasn't a personal issue for me, but feeling the need to have solidarity for my brothers and sisters in Christ who were suffering at the hands of the church due to teachings and dispositions regarding gender and sexuality, both personally, like in the situation you were dealing with in your life, and
Just like
in a general world, seeing people were hurt by, you know, what the church says about sexuality.
Well, because I think we were very well intentioned when we were existing within the church, in the sense that like we thought we were promoting what was best for people. And I think that's most people within the church, right? Is this vision of this is the way that we heal the brokenness in the world.
I hate to say this because I know we're trying to say nice things, but it's it's stuff like with the abuse cases within the church and the lack of seeing solidarity with survivors who say, hey, I was victimized and that sucked. And then villainizing them and blaming it on them, or saying, well, but, you know, we can't say the church is bad because of that. Like, okay, but no, our first priority should be solidarity in their pain,
really
not defending us against that. That's like the Catholic social teaching. And then finally, like the last value in Catholic social teaching is care for God's creation. And I think environmentalism.
Yeah, I don't know where, I got very confused where that got so politically charged. Because I do think also and it's not like I really was like attending a quote unquote like liberal Catholic school as a child. Like I don't think so. We also just, you know, we just learned Catholicism. But like I remember like the emphasis on like, oh, like we don't litter and we pick up trash and we recycle. Like,
yeah, those are like basic things.
Yeah.
But then I think it's some of the bigger stuff.
Well, and that was one of the things that was like kind of interesting to me on the study abroad when I was on like the Austria campus, is like having some of the professors who are Austrian and not American, still extremely like orthodox to Catholic teaching, but being like, yeah, you guys are a little confused what's going on over there with the like environment.
Yeah, they have very different politics in other parts of the world while still being very Catholic and having a lot of the same, you know, ideas. But some of the stuff about money and the way political structures should be set up is different. Austria has 8 different kinds of trash. Do you remember?
Yes, I do remember sorting it.
You have glass, dark glass and white glass, plastic, paper, biomule, which is like organic matter, composting, metal cans, one more that I'm missing. Oh, toxic waste like batteries, and then Restmüll, which is called like the rest of the trash, which is anything that didn't fit into those 8 categories. And we had to sort our trash into those 8 categories.
There is no convenience
or
of
else
the American
massive
curbside trash can.
Right. And yeah, that's like normal for them. Whereas I think Americans would like go absolutely crazy if like the government was requiring us to separate our trash into 8 different categories or else be fined.
And also you can't do it on Sundays.
Yeah.
Very Catholic of them.
Yeah. But, so, okay. So I feel like I've already gone on my Care for God's Creation rant talking about Laudato Si and how people were so angry about Laudato Si when Pope Francis released it as an encyclical about the environment and care for God's creation, which is not a new thing for Catholics supposed to be to care about. Literally, it's the very first thing God told Adam was to care for creation. But whatever. But that's the whole No Hope for Haiti episode was the homily that I got at my home parish.
That was like one of our first episodes.
It was that there is no hope for Haiti. Like it's Laudato Si is too little too late. We're already going to destroy the earth.
Yeah.
But anyway,
that was fascinating.
Yeah. So I find it like very funny how like not only did some of the values about human dignity end up leading me out of the church, but also how firmly I still believe in Catholic social teaching and think, yeah, you did get that stuff right. And that should be an actual emphasis on what our social teaching is and not all the stuff about sex and like reproductive rights. Like there are bigger things plaguing like our fabric of society that the church has actually preached about as dangers to our society, and not like the Catholic influencers who are fear mongering about like right-wing talking points about the gay agenda.
Well, and I think that's kind of one of the points where it really can be bridge building, is if we can take a step back and be like, hi guys, like we actually do share a lot of values.
Yeah.
The religious element of all of this has been weaponized in a large way in order to acquire votes. And it's like, yes, the Catholic Church does have teaching on abortion, but your religion has been weaponized against you by politicians to make you think that that's the only piece you should be thinking or caring about when it comes to voting. And somehow that's now bled into just like conservative politics generally being aligned with Christianity. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have something else you took from Catholicism?
I mean, because
I have more. I
wanted
to,
because there's a lot that
I talked about
what you're saying.
Catholic social teaching for a while, but you kind of talked about this earlier. But the next one I had on my list was community and sacrifice for others, and the value of having community in life. I think was a big part of what was so fulfilling to me of growing up in the church. Mm-hmm. I loved also like ritual structure, routine, traditions, especially in a community. Going to church not only every week for mass or on Fridays for adoration or to church events, but also like different rituals that would happen at certain times every year, like the Christmas Mass or the unique Triduum liturgies, and doing that all together with a group of people. And like, I loved doing that. I loved having the routine, and I loved having a place where I could go and know people there and feel safe. So I mean, I wonder like if this is different for other people, but for me being homeschooled, I wasn't seeing the only times I saw people regularly were typically at church.
Right.
I did have some homeschool stuff that I went to and everything, but I never would go somewhere every day and see the same people every day other than my family and my own house. And I just loved having this like larger community at church where I like recognized so many of the people there. I knew their names and knew a little bit about their family, even if I didn't talk to them, because like we'd been a part of parish life together for so long. We had a very vibrant parish that had both a lot of prayer events and a lot of social events. We had like big family dinner nights where 500 people would come to eat really delicious food in our gym every Friday, free meal, donations only. Yeah. And like we freaking loved that. And some of the like personal community rituals of like every June we'd have a parish picnic, which would be a cookout on a Sunday, and eat burgers and play frisbee and yard games with all the people at the church. Or in the fall, the parish school would do a fall festival and fundraiser stuff. And anyway, like that brought me a lot of fulfillment in life, and I've been trying to navigate how to build up that same kind of thing, like the routine of the seasons, the routine of the week, of the month, of like holidays and rituals, and somewhere predictable where I know who's going to be there, what's going to happen, and what things to do and stuff. Because I do think that was very enriching for me my whole life.
Well, yeah. And I think like familiarity is, as far as the part you were saying about like seeing the same people over and over again, like that is something that like is psychologically beneficial. Like it's something that tells your nervous system like that you're in a safe and known environment. And,
sure.
That's also like, as far as the like creating rituals and creating meaning, like I think that was something that did speak to me so much about Catholicism. I don't come from a family where I feel like we really had a lot of other forms of meaning making, you know what I mean? So like that was like the source of it. And I think there's other ways to imbue that into your life. But I think that is something that I really valued. And I continue to be a very spiritual person. And I've kind of gone back and forth with the way that like I interact with that now, or I guess like, I don't know, just the way that shows up in my life as someone who is no longer a member of the Catholic Church. And I just recently went back to try out a new church for the first time in like over a year this past Sunday, almost a week ago. And I really liked it. And like kind of Katie and I were talking through like the thought process around it, like how I was feeling, how she was feeling. And like for me, I was saying, I'm not looking for a church to tell me what the one right way of believing in everything is. Like, I don't think that I'm ever going to be able to, nor do I want to hold religion in that same kind of light again, where it's some authority, people are going to hear it and think like I have a problem with authority, but I don't want it. I'm not looking for it as a source of like clarity on like the truth about life and the universe. Right. It's more just like, I think that I am deeply spiritual. and my spirituality was formed within the language of the church and the language of Catholicism and Christianity and biblical metaphor. And so I don't think that the Bible is necessarily like the inerrant, inspired word of God, but I still find it a very valuable text. And I still find the teachings of Jesus to be extremely valuable. And so it's like I do really like the concept of being able to find a faith community again, where we can just have conversations about spirituality, like through a language, because I think it does get kind of difficult to discuss sometimes if you're not like, but I don't think that being Christian is like better than living out your faith in a different context or language, you know what I mean? And I also don't think that everyone needs that. For me, it was just something that I think that did have a lot of positivity in my life. And I kind of have been wanting to get back to just having a community to be able to like engage with that, like spirituality and meaning making and just discussion around these things that are outside of ourselves.
Yeah. One of the things that I loved and miss sometimes is stuff like Bible studies or religious book clubs where you would read a book and then talk about, oh, what does this mean for my life? Or we're talking about my value, or like, these are my insecurities and this is the way we had to like a language and structured ways to have community around that, especially at Franciscan. That's something that Franciscan does really well, is building community and opportunities for connection and belonging, and really draws people in. And yeah, I totally hear what you're saying about wanting to find like a connection for a spiritual outlet. I think for me, going to church in the last, oh my gosh, it's almost been a year that I started going to church off and on, but it was valuable to connect to that old part of me that was formed in that framework, like you said. I genuinely loved church and loved going to church. I loved the ritual. I loved the liturgy of the mass and prayers and all of that kind of thing. I was just had such a love for it, and trying to like reconnect to those parts of my childhood where it was like a very positive thing for me and a positive thing for my inner life and my psyche and everything is very lovely. I went to an Episcopal church, and they gave a message of welcome that they were glad everyone was there, especially if you're new, welcoming a visitor. We would love for you to come back another time or connect with us in some way. We believe that every person sees God in a unique way and has a unique perspective or understanding of God and is a unique reflection of God. And so by you being here, you are a gift to us to help understand God more fully. And they said that like genuinely meaning it, and not like you have the potential to see God in a new way, or even like, well, if you believe in God, we think you're special. It was like, I fully don't really know how much I believe in God, and I see God as a way that we interpret the world, that we sort of like made a structure to interpret the world by, and often gets weaponized, but at its core like makes a lot of sense and provides a lot of meaning to people. So does that mean there is an objective God? I don't really think so, but I don't know. And like this idea that perspective can also be meaningful to a religious faith community was like really took me back. And nobody asked like, what is your background with church? What do you believe about God and religion and faith and doctrine? It was like, we're just here doing this ritualized prayer, talking about the value that we all have as people and praying for the world and stuff. And anyway, it was whatever, like very touching and very moving, and like reminded me how deeply this is ingrained in who I am as a person. There was another church that I was going to, and they sang a lot of the same hymns, and it just like so much euphoria from just standing in a church singing the same songs that I've been singing in church since I was 5 years old. So
I definitely, I mean, like I said, I kind of just started going back to church. I really like this church. I want to keep like going sometimes, but there was this one part that really struck me when they were, I think it was right before they did the like preaching, like I was trying to almost said homily sermon, and they were starting out with a prayer, and they were praying for all of there were a lot of other like things mentioned, but the ones that particularly stood out to me, like all of the women who have been in churches before they were ever given permission to contribute, and
Oh, wow.
like all of the queer people who've been exiled from their faith communities despite wanting to participate in them. And I was just like, that was really touching to me. And yeah, like the worship music, and we read from the Bible, and there was it was like, you know, a church service structure. I didn't ever really attend a church outside of Catholicism until like literally like the past year and a half.
Yeah, no, me neither.
I'd been to one Mormon service once when like a coworker of mine, when I was in high school and working at this real estate company, we were like kind of like interns, I guess, and he was graduating and leaving on his Mormon mission. And so he said like I had a farewell speech in the context of the service. Yeah. So I'd been to that one time.
Oh, that's cute.
And I think that's literally it.
Yeah.
But
I just been to a couple like Protestant weddings, you know, like Christian weddings. Yeah. But yeah, same with me until do you remember when we went to church together in Steubenville?
Steubenville. That was an experience. I think there were like 5 people in that church.
Yeah, I think that we were 3 of them.
Right.
We went with another friend, and I think there were 2 other congregants and the minister, who of course talked our ear off
because they were like, "Oh my gosh, more people!"
Yeah,
and yeah, it was lovely what they were trying to do.
He offered that I could preach there sometime. Do you remember that?
I forgot about that.
I was in grad school for theology.
Yeah,
everyone was like,
preach
your chance, and I was like, I can't even bear to do my classwork, let alone
not gonna come preach at this
point. So. Yeah. It was cool, but yeah, definitely not the right vibe for what we needed. So, but yeah, like I found 2 really fun churches near me in Baltimore through recommendations of different people, and had a lot of value from that.
I mean, I think that's great. Did you have more things you wanted to say?
Let me just check real quick, because I made a list in advance so that I wouldn't. Oh, yes. Okay, wait. There were 2 more things I really wanted to mention. So the first is that silence and like no phone time is something that I know is really good for me, and I don't do enough of. This is definitely something I want to figure out a good way to do that for myself. But having silent prayer every day, it was crushing, okay, because I was really bad at sticking to a routine.
Yeah.
And it made me feel miserable about myself. It was like the one thing that I felt like was my big moral failing.
Yes.
Was my ability to maintain a good prayer life, and a prayer life where I was actually internally quiet and praying and talking to God instead of getting distracted. However, it was like very good to have like that set aside reflection time where I wasn't on my phone or on a book, like reading a book. I was reading specifically like a reflection book or writing or just trying to have stillness. I've found some of that like through meditation practices, but I really have to use like guided meditation videos and audios because otherwise like I will pick things up and go all over the place. So I've been playing with like being quiet sometimes, every once in a while in the car, or cross-stitching a little bit like quietly, where I can like think through all my thoughts instead of have a YouTube video and music and a movie playing while I'm like crafting and stuff. And especially like no phone time too. There were 2 retreats I went to the summer of 2017, whatever year it was. I can't remember. That's bothering me. I did the 5-day lead retreat, and we had to put all our phones in a box when we got there.
Yep.
And I loved it. Some of my friends who were there on the retreat talked about how it was hard to fall asleep because they were used to scrolling Instagram for 20 minutes and falling asleep while scrolling Instagram already at the age of 16. And I wasn't doing that, but I loved
I was
away from
allowed to have my phone in my
right.
But I understand
I loved having the break from like being on my phone or having to respond to texts and like getting to be present in the moment. And I went to a different discernment retreat a few days later, or a few weeks later, they did the same thing. So for another few days, I didn't have my phone, and it was so nice. And I really sometimes I feel like all this pressure all the time of like, I have to do something, or there's all these things I have to do, and I'm trying to stay focused, and I'm trying to like get done all my chores or take care of myself and all this stuff. And times when I can set aside my phone and not necessarily be aware of what time it is, but be like, I'm doing what I need to do, and it doesn't matter what time it is because I'm just living in the moment. Sort of like this weekend, honestly, like being like, okay, I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm not trying to get distracted by my phone. I'm trying to focus on our content, and like, it doesn't matter exactly what time it is because I'm just going to do it at the pace that we do it.
We need to do it.
And that is very freeing. So that is something, as I was reflecting on like what I wanted to say today, I was thinking about that, and like, you're right, like that was something that I loved, that it was inspiring to me to actually like incorporate that more into my normal life, normal secular agnostic life.
Yeah.
The daily prayer time and like no phone retreat time. Like I love, like retreats were so rejuvenating for me. I think I should like plan, a retreat, where I can go somewhere.
Honestly, I think it would be so
right?
lovely. I think,
oh my gosh.
Have you read The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry?
I like have heard of it.
Okay, I read it. I think I've only read it in the context of not being in the church at all.
Okay.
Like I've read it multiple times, but I'm pretty sure they all have been
since
I've
then.
not even been Catholic. But and it's a religious book. It's written by a pastor.
Okay.
And I literally love it so much. I will give the disclaimer of like -1 point for the brief mention of like gay being a problem in the foreword, but then he never talks about it again.
That's so random to just throw in there. You gotta love it sometimes. Like, okay, cross that off my bingo card.
All right, you mentioned it. We know that you don't like gay people. Moving on. The other stuff that he says is very valuable. But yeah, he talks about that a lot, and about like the
nuanced of you, Evelyn, to still read his book.
I actually really
anyway, sorry.
No, I like it a lot because he talks so many different pieces of it. Like he talks about like over consumerism and like of content, but also in like a financial sense, and the way that like our phones kind of drive that. And one of the big takeaways from his that I really like implement in my day-to-day life is, or like I guess kind of just hold mentally, is he was talking about how in moments of hurry are when he is not able to be fully present. Like those are the times where he's going to snap at his kids, trying to get them out the door to school.
Yeah.
Like you lose your ability to be fully present and fully loving to the people around you when you're always in a rush. And I think that's something I've like really held on to. And it's something that's like gone into a lot of the way that I go about my life now, and trying to be like, just like kind of prepared and give myself like a little more space. Because anytime you're just rushing and scrambling, like that's when the emotions are high and the tensions are high, and you're not speaking in the loving, patient kind of way you'd like to be to the people.
Yeah. I'm a very fast-paced person. Like my brain is moving fast, and I get very frenetic. But when I get to a point where I'm like calm and zen, it's great. You always like tell me to do some mindfulness or meditation or yoga or something. And I remember like last year when I moved to Maryland, I did yoga a few times, and I remember texting you and being like,
yeah, you were right.
Oh, that's what you're talking about. Because I was like aware, conscious of like, like it does things for the way that I've like, now I'm slowed down and like more mindful even afterwards of like,
because it would be Veronica like
frantic.
Scrambling for context
for no reason.
It would be for no reason. For quite literally no reason. Like it's like nighttime, it's like 8 p.m. It's like, where are you scrambling to? Like she's just like fumbling around the kitchen, just like
I have to finish all the dishes right this second.
Take a deep breath. Like you need to calm down. But yeah, I do think like that embodiedness, mindfulness, like slow. Obviously, the words embodied and mindful feel more like new agey, I guess. But I think they're very much like, in the context of Christianity.
The incarnate soul, incarnate in the body.
Well, and also like, just like Mary,
we are embodied creatures.
I was going to say Mary Magdalene, and I don't think that's right. But the two women and Jesus coming.
Martha and Mary.
Martha and Mary. There we go. That's what I'm trying to say. And the she has the better part, like her calmly, and it's something that's like difficult to like
Martha, you were worried about many things.
Yes,
right, yeah.
So I definitely hold that. There was some other piece with what you were saying though that I was gonna agree with. I don't know.
Okay, well, I have one more thing that I have just been thinking about a lot over the last year, thanks to my therapist really, is values-based living, which I know I've talked to you about a lot, but the idea of like there are different values and it's all unique to you as a person. Which values really stand out to you as most important? So she gave me this list of values and had me
like pick out the ones that are most important to you,
and the things that like stood out to me. So there's ones like acceptance, adventure, assertiveness, beauty, caring, challenge. Some of these values are like personal attributes versus things that you seek out and cultivate in your life. And reading through it was like very impactful to me to see also a through line between my old life and my new life.
Yeah.
Sort of what I was saying with Catholic social teaching or like human dignity and everything we've been talking about is how honesty and is like really important to me. Integrity
Yes.
is really important to me. So like trying to be true to who you are and true to what you believe, and these ideas of like go against the grain and against the flow, to, you know, stand up for your faith, even if you're martyred for it, even if it's not the popular thing to do. And I was really conditioned to do that. And then I started to see that I was actually in a homogenous Catholic environment. And so I was going against the grain by being like not the same as that. And instead of being like, wow, I'm no longer being obedient to the church, I was like, I have to be true to myself and my values.
Right.
Because I had this like deep need to do that, because that was what my values are. And my therapist like has continued to bring this up over the past year, that like, is this relationship values aligned, or is this job that you're applying for, or like, is this way that you spend your free time values aligned, or the way that you like worry about XYZ, is that even aligned with your values? Does it even matter what that person thinks of you? Oh, you're right. Like, actually, it doesn't matter to me.
I do think that's something, sorry, this is like kind of a different,
No worries.
This is the thing I had meant to bring up before, and I don't remember what you had said previously that rung true for me. But I think that that's something that a lot of people in the faith do, is that there's a lot of reflection on, I think the slight difference, at least to me, is that like the values are almost kind of preordained for you by your community,
right?
In a faith type setting sometimes, but
family values, traditional values.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I honestly think it's been very interesting, the more distance I get from it, to be able to be like, I think my values are mostly almost actually all the same. It's just that the information that I have access to is different.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Like, for example, like that conversion therapy is harmful. Now I know that. And now that changed kind of like the way that I think about gay people.
Right.
From seeing actual data of what gay
because
people
the whole
say
time
is helpful for them.
You've always, I think we've both always cared deeply about people living fulfilled, meaningful lives. And within the context of the church, I really, truly, deeply believed that living out a faith-filled life was the way to do that for people. But the more that I just had to kind of confront reality and new information and new experiences, I pivoted in a different direction. But I think the underlying values are still there. And like something I always used to get told in the church is that I was like a seeker of truth. Like you stand on what you believe in, still there.
Right.
And yeah, so I do love that.
Right. Yeah.
Any closing thoughts?
Those were my closing thoughts, because I feel like, yeah.
I love it. So yeah, we actually like, I know we may kind of, am I allowed to say that we're evangelists for apostasy?
Yes, repeat from the top.
Okay.
So he can cut that.
For sure. We may be over here low-key kind of being evangelists for apostasy, but we actually still like a lot of Catholic values. And I do feel like having conversations like this where we can be like, see,
it's not all stuff that we don't like. Like,
right,
that's the part that we feel the need to like speak up about sometimes.
Yeah.
But that like it really isn't that. We have a huge vendetta against Catholicism as a whole intrinsically. I think
not. I think at the end of the day, like anyone who's living a life of examined faith,
the unexamined life is not worth living.
I stand by that one still. I examined my life and here I am.
Ignatius of Loyola's examine.
All right.
Practice.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Oh, sorry. Were you going to go? You go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Leave, Laugh, Love podcast. Give us a follow at Leave, Laugh, Love Pod on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube to stay up to date. You can find us on all major podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Amazon, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Please give us a follow on YouTube and help us, get our channel out there now in the video format. How much value does our podcast add to your life? $1 a month, $2 a month, $3 a month? Our Patreon is linked in the description and helps fund our ability to fly out and record in person together in such a beautiful set and prepare all this content.
Yeah. Until next week, keep living, laughing, and loving.
Bye.